best advice someone ever told me was, look, I got to go talk to the CEO and I got to do $1 million ask. How do I do that? And at that, I was like, what is metamorphic, polymorphic, ransomware, and how does it initiate itself? And basically, a terrorist organization in the Middle East has just been compounding this artificial intelligence-based ransomware. There's a lot of distension because these threat actors have to pay each other, and they weren't paying each other. And so now it's like, all right, well, game on. I'm going to show the world this. And that incident spawned across 5 nations. Over 200,000 endpoints were hit, and it was wild. I've been to war 9 times, and I've seen it very calm, and I've seen it just blow up. And when people don't have their accoutrements and the normalcy behind what there is, the behavior changes. So,
welcome to the Ransomware Rewind podcast.
Got Ricoh Danielson here, former military special forces, former lawyer and forensic expert. And he's here to talk to us today about cybersecurity, new trends, things that are going on in the private and public sector. And we're really excited to talk to you. First thing, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Joe, good to meet you. Good to be on with everybody. Good to see everybody. So my name is Ricoh Danielson. Spent some time in the military. I went overseas 9 times, rotated to Iraq and Afghanistan, also in Africa, as a heavy hitter, as an infantryman, but also doing some support stuff, special operations. And additionally, did some OGA stuff. Cool, movies you see 13 hours with only 4 guys. That was definitely me. And after that, went to law school, was with OPDS, Office of Public Defense, supporting the digital forensic aspect of it, only doing capital punishment, death penalty, murder cases, but pulling forensics artifacts. And then I decided to pivot and go to incident response digital forensics, which is way funner, a lot more juicier. You can do ransom negotiation, reverse malware, and all this good stuff. And been leading the charge since then from a very long time now.
How did you transition from the military to what you're doing now?
So it was a very tough transition, to be completely honest with you. After 9 rotations, you become a certain way of operating and who you are. And I remember going to my teammates, right? And mind you, these are some very alpha guys. Hey, so I'm going to go to law school, boys. And they're like, yeah, that's not a good idea. All of them were still in Iraq. I was still in Afghanistan. Different parts of the Ukraine, Israel, and whatnot. And they're all fighting. And I'm just like, this is why I left, guys. I'm not as big as they are anymore. I was 250 pounds in, they're still rocking 250. I'm like, hey, got some other things to do. And it was all the forest through the tree lines, to be completely honest with you. I wanted to do something different. After that, after law school and whatnot, I actually went and got 3 master's degrees. So I was very fortunate to get them all paid for from the Wounded Warrior Scholarship. But it's a lot funner doing this stuff, man.
You also get that adrenaline kick too when you're responding to hack. It's really, you have to be in the moment and there's a lot of moving parts. You want to talk a little bit about a recent hack you've helped somebody with?
Actually, you bring a very interesting topic and a good conversation piece, because this is very true. Ever since I left the military, is always rushing towards the adrenaline, rushing towards the thing. And one of the things is incident response. This is why veterans and law enforcement, FBI guys and girls do amazing in IR, if you notice. Some of the big firms hire thes people, and that's kind of what we do. We thrive in chaos. And I think one of the biggest ones I've ever worked with, there's 2. One is the biggest burger maker in the world. I helped do one of their incident responses, and they're huge across. That incident spawned across 5 nations. Over 200,000 endpoints were hit, and it was wild. It was a pretty fun, exciting time. It was really good. The most recent one was we did one for a middle state of Tennessee, one of the second largest hospitals. He got hit with ransomware from a B and Liam gang. And it was fascinating because it took down the whole hospital. It was like, I've said some weird stuff in my life, but going to a hospital where there was nobody inside, I was like, this is creepy.
Oh, it's like from The Walking Dead or something, right?
Precisely. The organization got hit with from B and Liam. They got some pretty nasty ransomware. It took all their information. After that, we helped them recover within 84 hours and re-image over 1,700 devices within 84 hours. And what that means, it was just late nights, hard work, working with the Secret Service, FBI, insurance carriers, and trying to do the right thing by the customer, and in the same aspect, trying to mitigate and lower the risk and whatnot. So We worked those and also 15 other 100 breaches as well.
Yeah, the hospital hacks are really bad. I think that I don't know when it happened, but it seems like once the FBI took down Black Cat, they just took the gloves off and started going after hospitals. Do you know when that turned? Because they kind of like, we're gonna hack businesses and stuff, but we'll leave the hospitals alone. When did the attitude for hackers change on that?
Yeah, so what happens is we got to be very mindful of this is that ransom threat acting and also ransomware itself and the ransom game is a billion-dollar industry. So you have all these sub affiliates below and all these other organizations, gang organizations, right? And some of them really good. I think what happened is a few different things. One, the FBI took the kid gloves off, like you said, they went after them. Number two, one of the internal people, I believe it was probably internal espionage or counterinsurgency. There was a plant basically in there, released all their chats, and everyone went at each other's throats. So that was pretty wild. And then number three is there was a lot of distension because these threat actors have to pay each other, and they weren't paying each other. And so now it's like, all right, well, game on. I'm going to show the world this. And once you remove, unfortunately, the honor amongst thieves, now you just have straight gangster criminals. And that's what they did. They're like, all right, well, everyone's game on. I just got a phone call the other day that there's an elementary school that got hit. And I was like, why? And then right after that, 2 hours later, like, there's a nursery house. I'm like, what is going on, guys? Like, usually there's a rhyme or reason or a method, but it's just everybody's fair game now.
Do you think the hackers are just out there scanning the internet, looking using AI or their tools to find open APs? Company can scan now for who has MFA and who doesn't. Is that kind of what they're doing on the back end?
Yeah, I think what's happening, there's a ransom threat acting gang or an affiliate gang that's doing the initial reconnaissance, right? They're kicking off Shodan, Burp Sweep. They're just kind of like rolling around the earth. Hey, I got a list of these things. Who wants to buy it, right? And then somebody will buy it for $1,000, $2,000, and they'll go back to doing their business. And then the initial door kick, that's another $10,000 to $100,000. Then the lay of the land, where people want to just hang out, get lateral movement, own different admin accounts, that's another $100,000. So I think as they progress forward, it's going to become more and more dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts. What do you see in the future for trends and new technologies as far as hacking goes and what companies should watch out for?
Yeah, I think before it gets better, it's going to get a lot worse. When I was in Israel, I met with the Unit 8200, great unit, great cyber unit, and they talked about they saw first ever metamorphic and polymorphic ransomware. And I was like, whoa, what Transformers? What's going on?
Yeah.
And at that, I was like, what is metamorphic, polymorphic ransomware and how does it initiate itself? And basically, a terrorist organization in the Middle East has just been compounding this artificial intelligence based ransomware to morphosize itself and has been released in the wild now. So what I think is going to happen is the polymorphic and metamorphic ransomware is going to hit the industry probably within the next 2 years. Fakes, artificial intelligence, and additional on top of that, like the sophistication behind authenticity is going to get very, very dynamic, and it's going to be a hard target to hit.
Yeah. The episode on deep fakes, that's really fascinating. Going back to the polymorphic, metamorphic, it sounds like they're using AI to program these viruses. I like to put on my tinfoil hat once in a while. But, we saw what happened with Russia trying to hack Ukraine with Petya. It came back on them and, took out one of their major gas installations.
Mhm.
Is there the potential of one of these viruses getting out of control and just like
Yes.
becoming its own thing?
Yeah, what I think it's going to actually take the better bad parts of the malware that has worked and has not worked, and I believe more than likely it's maturing itself as we speak, and more than likely it will probably release itself to a lower infrastructure, lower security area. You're probably looking anywhere from the Middle East, East Africa, or even Eastern Bloc Europe because the infrastructure is just not as robust as people think it is. Additionally, the security is not as robust. You speak about Ukraine. I went there to go check out the war to see what's going on and also the cyber warfare aspect of it. And there's still threat acting gangs still operating as if there's no war going on. And they're carrying out their own business against the United States, against every other place but the Ukraine. You're like, this is fascinating.
I always thought that was fascinating when I found out that it's not illegal to hack the US in Russia. There's no like rules against that. Is there something to that?
So there's no law per se, but once you conduct inadvertent, access, unauthorized access, stealing, and stuff like at that point, and it depends on the magnitude of it, is definitely extraditable, and depends where you hail from. If you're a nation
Mhm.
state threat acting group, that's a different premise of prosecution versus a ransomware threat acting gang. What I'm noticing is that the United States kind of leaves it open to invite because we want to see what's out there, right? That's the best type of counterinsurgency is, hey, invite them in, take their goods, reverse engineer it, and be better at it. That's what we're known for.
Mhm.
Now, for the acting, what we're noticing when I used to work for a company called Blackwater back in the day, what we used to do is actually go get the bad guys in other countries. Now companies like that are approaching companies like us to say, "Hey, show us where the bad guys are. Do you want to come with us?" And
Hmm.
it's a pretty heavy fee, but yeah, I see that turning now going to be happening.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you have any inside info on the Stoli hack and how they went bankrupt and everything? Did you hear
I
about
don't
that
have
one?
no, I have no insight on that one.
Yeah, so this company Stoli is the vodka brand. I guess
Yeah.
they had a cyber attack, and at the same time, Russia confiscated like two of their factories. Seemed like it was a coordinated attack on them to put them out of business. Because I don't think Putin and the ownership got along.
Oh,
I don't know. I
I,
don't know like what bad blood there or what, but it just seemed a little bit too like convenient that all stuff happened at once.
So I don't know anything about that one. I got to do a little more research, but from a lawfare perspective, from a cyber perspective, we've seen it in our own country. We'll see it from the top down. You'll see, CEOs, CFOs being targeted, and then also big organizations. I mean, why wouldn't you do that to bleed out your competition if you're being funded by the other side? So that sounds about right to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. That's uh That's what I wanted to talk about. Stole
Yeah.
days. It's kind of funny when like it's kind of like crazy when like big brands get hacked. Do you guys help with the PR and stuff too, or?
Yeah. So what we do is whenever we have an initial engagement, we've seen other brands get hit, like the big, burger makers, the kings of burgers, some people who are maybe called Wendy's and whatnot. We meet with these people and we have a team, right? We're 41 strong. We show up, we do incident response, incident commanding, we bring our own general counsel or we refer it out. And then right there is a mass communication, right? We sit there with the organization and say, okay, what's your cover story to hold them off? What are you going to tell people? How are you going to tell? How are you going to disseminate? Because that will determine your legal stance of negligibility or will be determined if you're liable or not, right? So it depends on how you control the narrative. Additionally, you're gonna have to provide credit monitoring and stuff like that to different people. So what does that look like? And it's all about controlling the narrative and it's all about wrangling the news as well. You're gonna have a good PR person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing that I see is that companies have people inside that are like going to Twitter or Facebook and saying, "Hey, my company's down. I think it might be hacked." How do you control the people on the inside?
Yeah, so what you do is a Covell agreement, right? And then also punitive damages. You can sit on an agreement like that, say, hey, if you demean, deface, or misrepresent the company, you're liable for punitive damages. One of the best organizations that we did a hospital here in Tennessee was we showed up and they immediately told everybody, like, you're allowed to post whatever you want. However, can you post this one message? And it was we're doing the best we can with what we got. First responders here. We're working with law enforcement. Everyone else in between is here. And that message just propelled itself through different through different channels and actually control the narrative very, very
Mhm.
positively.
That's something people should put in their incident response plan is their communication strategy. Maybe even have a pre-written
Statement.
statement saying, "Hey, because all you have to do is upload anonymously that you hacked to IC3 or something like that, and you're already, cooperating with law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're not like calling them and getting them involved. So there's a way to like skew things so that you're looked at a better light.
Yep. I'm glad you brought the IC3 thing and also the different regulators. Here's what we're seeing, all right? From the incident response perspective and also the attorney perspective, we'll gather all of our information. We'll go ahead and be like, hey, here's all your stuff. Here's the evidence you're going to need to move forward. However, the FBI and also other organizations, unless it's $1 million and above, they're really not interested. So they're going to be like, all right, so go ahead and handle that. We'll catch up with you later. And same with the regulators we've been noticing. And the regulators are amazing people. I just believe that they're very understaffed, extremely understaffed. And we help a client submit a claim and also a notification, and they're like, yeah, we'll get you next year. Pretty wild. But you still have to do it though, in good faith.
Right, right. And you have the public company of the SEC rules.
Right, right. So the SEC rules, that's one thing I don't agree with, but I see value. One, you definitely should be a reporting mechanism. But number two, how are you going to prosecute the technologists or go after the CISO or the CSO or whatever, or CIO? In reality, like you're setting the precedence basically as a whipping mechanism. I think it's the whole wrong premise, as a matter of fact. I think the SEC should be used as a leveraging point, not as a whipping tool.
I completely agree. And I think that CISOs get blamed first and they have the least amount of power of the board. Even if they're on the board, it's usually they're kind of like half on it a lot of the times. And then they get blamed. I don't think CISOs are in a really good situation right now. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, so I've been a CISO before. I've been a CISO 6 different times for healthcare organizations, IoT, and hospitals. And the first thing I always ask as part of my onboarding requirement is I want equity in the company. I'll forego the salary, but I want equity. And at that point, once you're issued equity, that means you have skin in the game. If you're a CISO and you don't sit at the board level or the ownership level, you're being set up for failure. And unfortunately, and it's just sad. And then number two is unless you're with a bigger financial firm, right? Unless you're with a huge firm, I would definitely position that. And then on top of that, if you're not in the position of power, then you're in the position of risk deference. You can defer your risk to different people. This is your deal, not my deal. I'm not owning that risk. So when the hammer drops, and it will drop, you're not the one getting hit. Or if you do get hit, you're not going to get hit that much.
Right, you're giving the information to the chief risk management officer or the CFO, and they're the one that has the responsibility for that after you
Yeah,
give them the
additionally,
info.
exactly, exactly. Additionally, what I was highly encourage my fellow CISOs and cybersecurity officers is go get D&O insurance, director and operator or officer insurance. You need that. I don't care what your company says, you're gonna need it because there will be a time where they're gonna be like, all right, we're gonna sue everyone. And we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And personally, I've had to go get on a few different business ventures myself. So that's just for me though.
No, I completely agree. I have a background in insurance. That's what I do as my day job.
Oh,
Directors and officers insurance is really important, but you have to watch out. A lot of since 2020 and 2021, there's been a lot of like cyber exclusions on there or total cyber exclusions where there'll be basically a caveat in the policy saying that if it stems from a cyber incident, then we're not going to cover it.
yeah.
And this was in response to like directors and officers policies covering cyber incidents when they weren't supposed to, but it was overcorrection because if it's a bad board decision, it still should be covered if they're sued for it, even if it came from a cyber incident, right?
Yeah.
To pay or not pay the ransom, how you handled the communication, did you report it or not report it? These are all like important decisions that the board has to make, either in the moment or plan for it beforehand.
Yeah, even for myself, I'll carry just even general liability and also E&O insurance because at some aspect I'm like, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to be held liable for that, right? I mean, I'm not doing anything crazy, criminal, or anything like that. But hey, this is not good, and I'm not going to take the blame for it. So,
Right.
especially if a CISO reports to the CFO, bad reporting structure.
Why do you think it's a bad report structure?
Well, if you're a CISO, right, and you're reporting to the CFO sees black and white, right, zeros and ones. This either it's a positive indicator or a negative indicator. Your cost department or your revenue department, and every aspect of it, the security is more than likely a cost department, and they're going to be like, how can I lower the cost so much more? And they control it. If you sit next to or right at above, and I've sat there before, it's like, here's the lay of the land. Here's what I need the investment of it, and here's why. If you can do it that way, it's a little bit better.
Yeah, I think there should be a class in CISO college, like talking to the board. That could be like the class or board
Yeah.
communication 101, because the way that the board talks and the way that, cybersecurity department, IT department, looks at things is completely different.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I had know tons of technical CISOs that I'm like, dude, you should never be in a boardroom ever. And and then you have guys like me, or staff members like me, who are like, you can speak the high level, you can speak the technical, you can speak here. So I think you're very right. There needs to be some sort of course of interpersonal skills.
Yeah, and I think return on risk or return on investment for cybersecurity is getting a little bit better. The way that they're quantifying it, there's some good software and new things coming out for it, but it's very hard to quantify like what you're going to get back by possibly not getting hacked. Like, how do you communicate that? We got to put this in because there's this percent chance that we're going to lose this percent money, and we like multiply that. You like use MITRE or like what?
There's a guy you should meet. His name is Ross Young. He's a former CIA guy, and he taught me this. And mind you, we're at the same level. Very, very smart gentleman, a bit too smart sometimes. And he was like, "You got to tell the story, Rico. You got to tell the story." And I'm like, "All right, well, what story are we telling?" He's like, "How much you're saving the world and how much they're not losing business." And I was like, got it. However, your metric, your KP or your key performance indicator cannot be the fact that we did not get breached. That's bad, right? You cannot do that because so what happens when you do get breached? You're fired. Boom, right? So
Right.
that's just not a good idea. So I think it's a matter of telling the story. Hey, we have a contractor requirement. We have regulator requirements. Here's what it means to the top line revenue. We're able to close these business deals because we were able to get this certification, and here's why, right? So at that point, the conversation changes that you're a contributor to the top line revenue.
Hmm, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. CISOs should tune into this part. Yeah, this is really good.
I'm on a chat with about 1,000 different CISOs, and I love it because you can actually have the gloves off conversation. You're like,
Mhm.
hey, let's sit down. This is a tough conversation. How do you do this? How do you do that? And one of the conversations is like, look, I got to go talk to the CEO and I got to do $1 million ask. How do I do that? Here you go. This is how you do it, gentlemen and ladies.
I
So
like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's really that you guys talk to each other because it can be a lonely position, you kind of
You-
butted in
call-
between like a couple different departments. It's kind of a
so
thankless job.
it is a very thankless job, and you are the, as they would say, two analogies. You are the Jesus Christ of everything. Everyone praises you and whips you. And the other part is you're very much like a Leonidas, right? Like you're gonna lead the charge, but then you only got 200 people behind you. So, and the rest of the world's coming for you. So,
I
I
love that.
believe those two analogies depict being the CISO.
That's awesome.
I wrote two books, or actually three books this year, but one of them was like a very art book. I'll send you one, okay? And it's for a coffee table book, and basically use artificial intelligence, images, and whatnot. And one of the things was in there is the CISO, right? And it's a shield, it's a gladiator, and it's very much to me the depiction of a true CISO, because you're gonna go into combat, you're gonna get hit, and the question is how are you gonna survive and who's coming with you?
Yeah, you're the general of the IT department. You're called into action. You're watching over the castle walls, and then sometimes you got to go into battle. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
You haven't always been a CISO or incident response person. For the people listening here that want to get into cybersecurity, that are interested in it, how did you transition?
So when I was going from, remember, law enforcement, just being an infantryman, a ground pounder, there was only three recommendations that were given to me, and I still recommend it, but now you have so much more and so much easier, so much more accessible stuff. The best advice someone ever told me was, remember, the internet, all it is just a big network. That's all. So you need to understand networking. You need to understand security. A plus, I wouldn't worry about, but I'll say networking plus and security plus. So those would be the two recommendations. And I read those every year just because everything's changing, right? If you want to do now, if you're very, let's say you're a non-technical person and you're very good at policy, I will start my journey off in GRC, risk governance and compliance. I would definitely lean into that very, very heavily. One, nobody wants to do it. Two, it's a wide open field. And number three, not everyone can do it because technical people don't like to read stuff. They're just like, hey, I want to go fix, right? So I met amazing, brilliant people in the non-technical side. and they started like traditional stuff, bachelor's degree, associate's degree, and they just got it right. Now, from the technical side, I've seen people who have no education whatsoever do amazing. I've seen people who are pen testers, incident responders, reverse malware. So that really depends on the skill set, right? What you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. The third one I always tell people and I always push people to because I don't think people are paying attention to it is identity access management. And the IAM, a super non-technical deal, but it'll get you in the technical weeds. And then number three is going to be your ability to control who gets what. The moment you understand access control and network, I think you're golden at that point.
Interesting. I read somewhere recently that insurance companies are looking more on privileged access management too when they're writing policies. It's becoming, they're going from endpoint detection being like the leading indicator to access management. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so you have PIM and PAM, right? Privilege management, identity, and also permission access management, privilege access management. If you can master those two things, but here's the thing, either it's going to cost you in labor hours or it's going to cost you in tools. There's some really amazing PAM tools and also some multi-factor tools that are going to cost a lot of money. But then there's some ways you can do it at the non-technical level where you can say, hey, I'm going to turn this rule on, and make users go a certain way in the user experience that you can control the access management.
Yeah, it's. I feel like with the tools people have, just by changing, some configurations, they can make huge improvement in their cybersecurity stance without spending any money. Do you have any examples of those?
Yeah. So one comes to my mind. Anytime we work an incident, the first thing we always ask for is we need to know what's in your environment, right? Whether it's an Exchange server on-prem or with the O365 environment. And we see this in a lot of 365 environment as nobody has conditional access turned on. Those are quick wins, very fast. There's about 45 to 47 default rules you can just turn on and it won't hurt anybody. And it'll add that extra permission of layer. I think it's a great idea. That's what I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had somebody get into one of our employees' emails, and the thing we did to just stop that from happening again is just we don't let anyone from outside the United States access our network, and just limit it geographically. And I know that some people have VPNs and they can get around that, but it takes out like the guy in Russia that's just like going in and checking if they can get in.
Yeah, so there's that. You could do that, right? Geofencing. The another ones you could do any type of applications such as like DigitalOcean or something like that. You're like, hey, we don't do that. We don't allow people to access it that way. That'll be like a Brave browser or something like that. And the other thing that what I recommend to people to do is do a business email compromise assessment. These are called BECs, right? Or if you want to call them due diligences. And that's where you kind of look in your environment, like, okay, what's going where? One of the things we notice is with the insurance companies, they'll hit us up and they'll say, hey, these two people bought each other. Can you go in as an independent person, as an organization, and do a business email compromise assessment to let us know? And that's what we do. And it's pretty awesome.
What is involved in that kind of assessment?
Yeah. So basically, what we do is we show up. It's usually a fixed fee for certain amounts of endpoints and whatnot. We show up and we're like, hey, we need global reader admin access and also additional admin access on top of that to the environment. And at that point, we start pulling different forensics artifacts and different elements. We scrutinize the overall intent, and then we start understanding what is the ley line, what looks normal to the organization and what doesn't. Usually 9 times out of 10, we scratch the surface and we find that, hey, been a threat actor environment. They're shuffled around this invoice fraud type deal.
When I'm dealing with cyber insurance clients, I see a lot of funds transfer fraud,
Yeah.
Invoice manipulation. What are some ways to avoid that?
One of the mortgage companies in Tennessee that I went to go give a lecture with, they're like, we don't make any funds transfers without picking up the phone first. And I'm like, well, okay. And in Tennessee, you got to understand, right? Like, it's pretty slow and simple here. So people are like, hold on, man, let me call you right quick. And you're like, all right, call me. That's number one. Number two, just remember this. Threat actors operate on 3 different things: pain, fear, and pleasure. Okay. And there's always going to be a sense of urgency. Hey, Rico, this is the CEO. I need you to do this right now. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of this. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And the remedy, the pleasure is I need you to transfer the money. No questions asked. Pain, fear, and pleasure. Slow down, pick up the phone, IM them, like Teams them or whatever,
But
right?
they're on the way to the airport.
Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are.
They're just
They-
getting on a plane, though. Get a hold of
Absolutely
them.
cool. Perfect. I'll put it this way. $500,000 transfers do not happen like that, right? There's a lot of due diligence. If anything, call the attorney or call the accountant, be like, "Hey, what do you think?" Right? So,
Mm.
the urgency, just slow it down, hang tight. You're not going to lose your job. Ask the validating question.
Yeah, I see that a lot on the personal level too with phishing emails. It's always like they're gonna cancel your account or it's gonna go to collections or some kind of like penalty that's gonna happen if you don't click the link and deal with it right away.
Oh yeah, that's the pain part. And the real question is this: you got to sit down and ask yourself, like, that pain that is going to be inflicted, right? Is it really that bad? Like, no, not really.
Yeah. What's the funnest part of your job?
You get to see the true essence of a person during crisis. Like, I've seen grown men just crumble, and I've seen great people stand up, step forward, and it's just wild. And then the other part is you actually get to help people. We get to do some really really cool things like bring down big ransom gangs, scam artists. We help tackle one of the cartels' call centers. Stuff like the stuff you see in the movies. You're like, oh, this is what we do every day.
Nice. Not all heroes wear capes. I love it.
No, not all. Used to back in the day, but
What do you what do you wish people asked you that you never get asked?
yeah, that's a good question. I've never been asked that one. Given where they are in life, what should they be doing with security and technology itself? Living in Tennessee, I used to live in the West Coast in California and LA, San Diego, and Phoenix, and a lot fast pace, right? A lot of fast pace. And I noticed here in the Midwest is that nobody really understands the tenacity and the fullness of technology. And I wish a lot of people would take the time and say, "Hey, you're a technologist, Rico. What should I be looking at? Not now, but what should I be looking at? What should I be getting to know?" Because technology is already here and it's moving extremely fast. And I think in the next 7 years, you're going to see a dramatic increase of something, and you'll see it.
Yeah, something we haven't even heard of yet. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
usually how it goes.
yeah. Usually, every 7 years is whenever like it goes, especially with technology. And what'll happen here is artificial intelligence, and whatnot. Like I see it every 7 years, and then every 4 years, and then every year. That's what's going to happen.
You know, we talked about tinfoil hats and stuff and having we like to have a little fun on this podcast and you just do like what ifs, like what catastrophes or things that could happen, you know, if this and this happened, that you've just thought of in your head at some point.
Yeah. So I live in the country, right? One of the things that I always worry about, and I think it's a very true thing, is in the event one of the grids goes down, right? And in the event a major transformer within the region, within the county goes down, what does power look like? What does sustainment look like? What does food, shelter, and also fighting look like? I've been to war 9 times, and I've seen it very calm, and I've seen it just blow up. And when people don't have their accoutrements and the normalcy behind what there is, the behavior changes. So, what if this happens? What does that look like? Are we ready or we're not ready? Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's scary. I know that the grid going down is definitely something that could happen either from a cyber attack, an EMP, could just be like a storm, like what happened in Texas, like 3 years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, people need to be ready. They should have like at least a week's worth of food and water,
More
so
than
they
that,
can
I'll say 6 months.
six
You're gonna have
months.
to
Yeah,
6 months, and then you'll probably need a good figure out how your water situation, and then unfortunately, your fighting situation, like how are you gonna defend your family and stuff like that.
absolutely. Yeah, at that point, the concealed weapons laws don't really matter.
Yeah, at that point. The other what I always wonder is, our cell phones, right? Whatever happens to our cell phones if there's a cell phone outage, and do you have that multi-layer effect of like, okay, Verizon, AT&T, the big ones go away. What about the smaller ones? Do you know how to operate a ham radio for communication? Because at the end of the day, we as people need to be able to communicate, right? Same thing with your internet. We have the steady fast internet, but what is your failover?
Yeah, that's a good point. And when you're doing incident response with companies, they need to have they need to have contingencies in place too for their communication, right? Because you have to assume that you may not have email, the phone system may be down, they could be listening on your phones or emails.
So
What do you recommend for that?
yeah, the alternative communications plan, right? One thing when I was working one of the world's biggest banks, we would do this exercise once a year. Is we would go meet the CEO, CFO, and whatnot. We would take their cell phone and we'll take that, and we would figure out a way how for them to get a alternative communication going. And it was always going to Walmart, buying a burner phone, buying a burner laptop, and standing up like, okay, we're gonna start communicating this way. And it was very fascinating because you have these individuals who are worth billions of dollars, and you pull them out of their environment, and it's quite fascinating because they're like, "Oh, I actually have to go to Walmart." I'm like, "Hey, we have to go to Walmart.
I've
Let's
never
go,
been to
sir."
Walmart.
Yeah, I own a Walmart, but I can't see one, right? And it's like, yeah, like this is the real deal. And whenever I was working like presidential details and also State Department details, this was ingrained to us, right? We had our little go bag, and then we had our A pack, and then our A pack had everything in it. But our go bag was for us because we would have a burner phone, $10,000, our red passport, and an alternative means to get out of the country. And that's the same mentality I had with these CEOs. I was like, you need to have a go bag, sir.
So you have your bag that has all your equipment, but then you have something that's on your body as well in case you lose your backpack.
Yeah, or unless you got to roll out, right? Or you gotta get out of Dodge. Like usually $10,000 in a Middle East country or an African country will get you across the continent very quickly. So
Yeah, and I've heard on some podcasts that some good advice for just people that are just around, just like walking around, you should always have $100 bill on you because it's easy, light, and most times you can like pay somebody $100 to get you somewhere.
So we used to, when we were in Haiti in Africa, right? Also in Afghanistan, we were notorious for bribing people. We were not above it. We're like, we had commandeered a ship from Miami and brought some stuff over here, and it was at the port. And I remember going to the guys, I was like, what do you guys want? They're like, money. I was like, perfect, easy. How much? And they're like, oh, $500. I'm like, perfect. Just give me the ship, please. So money goes a long way no matter where you are in whatever country.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much for coming pod. We're a growing podcast, pretty small. So having a high profile guy like you on it is pretty cool. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram if you really want to, Ricoh_Danielson_, LinkedIn, of course. But yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm on the news every night pretty much. So if you really need something from me, I can drop an information, email address, and also a phone number if you really want to get in contact. Absolutely.
Awesome. And you said you wrote a couple books this year. What books were they, and how do people get a hold of those?
Yeah, so they're on Amazon. So I've actually written a total of about 10 bucks. In the last year, I spent most of it. So one was a no nonsense, no BS cybersecurity. This was like how to do cybersecurity and have the real authentic conversation that you really need to with your people, right? Number two was the FM Field Manual, which is a very lightweight art book of cybersecurity. I realized a lot of people don't do art in cyber. So I made it as a coffee table. I was like, here you go. And then I made the bigger one, the TM, the Tactical Manual. It's very, very technical. It's about 200 something pages, along with pictures and whatnot. It says, here's how you do X, Y, and Z. They're $90 on Amazon. Definitely recommend that. And when people say it's kind of expensive, I'm like, well, if you think about it, it took me 2 years to create each one. And at $1 a day, I think we're all right.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out, and we'll put the links in the show notes. And yeah, thank you for coming. If you're ever down in San Diego, I'd love to do one in person. And thanks again for coming.
Hopefully I'll be there soon. Rock and roll, Jill. Thanks, man.